noticed this resemblance. He knew he had to do something about it. He decided to pretend to be Walter, which gave him a one-way ticket to Los Angeles. The opportunity would allow the young boy to have an increased chance of being in movies and meeting his favourite stars. The case was back to square one. The search for Walter Collins would have to resume, but with no new leads, Christine was forced to return to her job and continue to hope that Walter would one day be found. Meanwhile, unknown to anyone in Los Angeles, a series of events was unfolding in Wineville, California. It all began when a girl named Jessie Clark went to go check up on her younger brother, Sanford Clark. 2 years earlier, Sanford had moved to California to live with his uncle, Gordon Stewart, and his mother, Sarah Louise. But since then, Jessie had been concerned